Let me tell you a bit more about the proposed new definition of extremism. Now, it will say that, quote, core behaviours that could constitute extremism include attempts to, quote, overturn, exploit or undermine the UK's system of liberal democracy to confer advantages or disadvantages on specific groups, or threatening individual rights or enabling the spread of extremism. Good luck making sense of that, I say. It sounds a bit of a catch-all to me, but I would love to know what you think. Fascinatingly, on the front page of The Observer, and I'm going to credit the journalist involved, John Ungode Thomas is the reporter in this case, has managed to get hold of what are described as leaked documents. And what they appear to show is that people within the government, particularly civil servants and government lawyers, are concerned about the ramifications of this extension of the definition. And it strikes me that the ground has been laid for some time, hasn't it, by the Conservative Party for this kind of change in legislation. And the reason I say that is because when I was thinking about how this all came about, a number of politicians sprang to mind. So I'm going to take you through some of the rhetoric that we've heard over the last couple of years and why I think this is, once again, part and parcel of the government's culture wars. If you ask me, this all started with the Just Stop Oil protests and Extinction Rebellion activists who Liz Truss, who was then running to be Tory leader and whose premiership did not last as long as a lettuce, vowed to crack down on these protesters, and she branded them militant activists.
Can I just say a few words on the militant people who try and disrupt our country and who try and disrupt our democratic process and try and disrupt our essential services? I would legislate immediately to make sure that we are standing up to militant trade unions who stop ordinary commuters getting into work. And I would legislate to protect our essential services. And I will make sure that militant activists, such as Extinction Rebellion, are not able to disrupt ordinary people who work hard and do the right thing and go into work.
Militant trade unions. That was Liz Truss. Then Home Secretary Suella Braverman called for new legislation on public order and accused the Labour Party of encouraging extremists to disrupt society.
So yes, I'm afraid, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's the Labour Party, it's the Lib Dems, it's the coalition of chaos, it's the Guardian reading, tofu-eating, wokerati, dare I say, the anti-growth coalition that we have to thank for the disruption that we are seeing on our roads today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I urge opposition MPs and members of the other place to take this second chance, do the right thing, respect the rights of the law-abiding majority and support this bill.
Oh, those militant extremist tofu eaters. They are the bane of my life. Don't know about you. Then there was Gareth Johnson, Conservative MP for Dartford. He went further and called on Just Stop Oil to become a proscribed terror organisation.
These people are not protesters, they are criminals. Will the Prime Minister therefore consider making Just Stop Oil a proscribed organisation so that they can be treated as the criminal organisation they actually are.
Now, of course, much more seriously, October the 7th happened, and we saw that terror attack in southern Israel. We then saw Israel launch its military campaign in Gaza. 2 weeks after the attack, on October the 7th, Jacob Rees-Mogg said that marches in support of a ceasefire were letting extremists thrive.
Most of these, the vast majority of these, were peaceful and merely exercising their legitimate right to protest. However, there's equally no doubt that this movement has provided a space for extremists to thrive.
Former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick then said that the protesters didn't represent British values.
I mean, I've seen that recently, for example, with the marches through London, where I saw some people who simply did not share British values.
And so the escalation continued. Braverman wrote an article in which she said Islamists were in charge of Britain, and Lee Anderson decided to weigh in on that.
I don't actually believe that these Islamists have got control of our country, but what I do believe is they've got control of Khan and they've got control of London. And again, this stems with Khan. He's actually given our capital city away to his mates.
Later, George Galloway was elected in the Rochdale by-election, and an Opposition Day motion on a ceasefire had to pass on the nod due to chaos surrounding the vote. In response, Sunak called an impromptu press conference in which he said the behaviour of some protesters threatened democracy.
We must be prepared to stand up for our shared values in all circumstances, no matter how difficult. And I respect that the police have a tough job in policing the protests we have seen, and that they are operationally independent. But we must draw a line. Yes, you can march and protest with passion. You can demand the protection of civilian life. But no, you cannot call for violent jihad. There is no context in which it can be acceptable to beam anti-Semitic tropes onto Big Ben in the middle of a vote on Israel-Gaza. And there can be no cause that you can use to justify the support of a proscribed terrorist group like Hamas. And yes, you can freely criticise the actions of this government, or indeed any government. That is a fundamental democratic right. But no, you cannot use that as an excuse to call for the eradication of a state or any kind of hatred or anti-Semitism.
That, of course, was Rishi Sunak in his non-emergency press conference. And for the gentleman who will keep bringing into the show saying that we added bird sounds to that statement, I promise you, sir, we didn't. Anyway, I hope, helping build a picture of how the government and ministers have been, laying the ground for today's briefings to newspapers. Because, of course, Michael Gove is now looking to change the definition of extremism to extend it to the point where lawyers within government are concerned that the definition is so wide that it is open to legal challenge. Anyway, Victoria Atkins, the Health Secretary, was on what we call the morning round, the bit where a government minister gets rolled out to do a range of political interviews. She decided to defend the new definition of extremism that's been proposed that no one can quite understand.
There are some people, sadly, who hold views that are contrary to the values that we hold as a country. And we should not allow those views to percolate through society, or indeed allow them to try and change the way we as a society conduct our democracy, the way we allow Parliament to set its own rules and conventions and so on. And so Michael, as you will know full well, has taken a long-standing interest in this and is setting out his ideas as to what we should do to tackle some of these very, very extreme views that we are sadly seeing expressed around our streets. But also, of course, people going, yesterday I saw somebody had ripped apart a painting, and you think this is not the way that we conduct democracy and express our views in this country.
You see, this is what they do, isn't it? It's what they do. It's what they've done for years and years and years. When they're out of ideas, this government will do things like this. It will ratchet up rhetoric. It will tell you that there are extremists under every bed, that what we need are new laws to crack down on protest, to crack down on freedom of expression. And then they'll tell you it's all for you, to protect you. And they do it really cleverly, actually. So they'll circle around the truth with their words, but never quite land upon the truth. So absolutely, let me be completely clear. If somebody at a protest, for example, is supporting the violent overthrow of our democracy, they should be arrested, charged and prosecuted. We have the laws already in place to do that. If somebody is stirring hatred against racial groups, if somebody is trying to stir hatred against Jews or against Muslims or against any creed or colour, we have laws to deal with that stuff. Should they be enforced? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no shadow of a doubt in my mind that that is what should happen. The question for you this hour is, do we need to keep fiddling around the definition of what extremism is? Do we need to keep conferring upon the police yet more powers? Do we need to keep legislating? Do we need to keep having politicians scare us